Hello everyone, welcome back to our Anthropology PYQ series on SRIRAM's IAS platform. So friends, I welcome you all to this session on behalf of SRIRAM's IAS. So friends, first of all, a very good morning to all of you, and those who have joined in the live session, you can just give an indication that you have joined in the session. So friends, in today's discussion, let us take up another important question from the previous year, that is 2025 UPSC Civil Services Examination, and let's try to just decode it and let's learn the concept in a systematic fashion. So now, the question of the day with us is this. So look at the question. So the question is this. So examine the utility of human remains in forensic analysis and discuss the facial reconstruction technique. So this is the question. So the question has been picked from the forensic anthropology point of view. So the question is from the applications of the physical anthropology, applications of anthropology, applied anthropology part of the question, right? So now the question is asking for how the human remains will help what is the utility of human remains in the analysis of forensic aspects. So that's one thing. And then further, we need to discuss about the facial reconstruction techniques. So what is facial reconstruction techniques? What is its purpose? What is its utility in forensic science? And what are the other key components of the facial reconstruction technique? So that's the basic question, right? So now let's try to understand this in a systematic fashion. So there, if you see from the perspective of this question, how can we approach the question? So you can simply approach the question like this. So in the introduction, as the question's central theme lies with the forensic anthropology, so you can just pick and you can just start the answer also from this perspective. So where you can simply define what is forensic anthropology, and then you can bring in the context of the given question, like with reference to the human remains. So that's how you can just give the introduction. So there, again, you can highlight the role of human remains in the forensic analysis. So this is how you can just enter into the question, right? So now, further, if you see in the body portion of the answer, so what you can write? So in the body portion of the answer, you can simply write or you can highlight the utility of the human remains in the forensic analysis. That should be your first part of the answer. And in the second part of the answer, so you have to systematically discuss the facial reconstruction technique. So regarding its purpose, regarding its utility, regarding its key components and all other aspects related to this. So that should be your body portion of the answer. And then further, what in the conclusion you can mention means, in the conclusion you can simply mention or reiterate the significance, relevance and utility of the human remains. So with respect to the forensic analysis. So that's what you can do. So friends, in this question, we are going to learn very important aspects about the forensic analysis. So where we are trying to just look about the utility of the human remains in forensic analysis in detail, right? So now let's proceed further and let's see how you can introduce the answer and what kind of content you can write in the introduction. Now, as I have said, you may start by defining the forensic anthropology also. You may start because the theme is related to forensic anthropology. So where you can simply say that forensic anthropology, if you see, it's a specialized branch of the physical anthropology. So where it applies the scientific study, of human skeletal remains to the medico-legal investigations. So when we check up some of the medico-legal investigations, so to overcome from such kind of medico-legal cases, so where you can just study the human skeletal remains. So most of you might be interested in some of the crime thriller movies. So those who are interested in investigating and crime thriller movies, so they can connect to this subject very well. Because forensic studies is all about investigation of some criminal cases or some such kind of cases. So that's where, so this particular concept will be very, very interesting even in the academic session also. So now let's try to proceed further and let's try to see. So further, so in forensic anthropology or in forensic analysis, if you see, human remains, so particularly human remains, let's say for example there could be a crime scene. So in that crime scene, when we try to just visit the scene, there we can see some of the human remains, like let's say the bones of the burnt person, or let's say for example any kind of teeth that may be available, or any kind of the body parts that can be available. If it is murdered kind of kind of things, then you can pick some of you can see some of the body parts like hands, legs, or some of that kind of thing. So there, human remains in such kind of case, it forms a critical component of the forensic analysis. So especially where the bodies are highly decomposed, where the bodies are burnt and bodies are dismembered, or the bodies are skeletonized. If skeleton is available, if it is purely burnt, or if it is decomposed, in such kind of cases, those human remains will help us to clear off those kind of investigation cases. So that's where, human remains will be helpful, right? So then further, human remains provide a kind of reliable, long-lasting and biological evidence to clear off these medico-legal cases. So that's where, these human remains will help help the investigators to establish the identity of the person, reconstruction of the events, as well as to determining the legal facts. So from that point of view, utility of the human remains in forensic analysis is very vast, and it is very central, and it is very important. So that's where you have to understand, and that's where you have to just pitch the body of the answer, right? So that's what we'll be understanding in the body portion of the answer, right? So we have to write that thing here. So here, now how we can just proceed towards the body portion. So first, we can highlight the utility of the human remains in the forensic analysis. So basically, if you see what is the utility of human remains in the forensic analysis. So utility means application, utility means use. So how human remains will help in establishing or clearing of the cases in forensic analysis. So that's the basic topic. So now, first and foremost thing what you can see, you can establish the identity of a person systematically with the human remains. So with the help of skeletal remains, with the help of bones, or with the help of anything. So we can establish the identity of the person. So for personal identification, it will be useful. So that's the first application or utility. Second, with the help of human remains, we can reveal the case and manner of the death. That's another important thing. So there could be a lot of trauma signatures that we can see on the body of the deceased person, or the person involved, person who is the victim. So there, in such kind of cases, by analyzing the trauma signatures, we can systematically reveal the cause of the death and the manner of the death. So the forensic experts can do that. So in movies also you can see that they will say that this particular person has not died because of this particular issue, but because of the poisoning activity, or because of this, because of that. So they will be revealing the cause, and they will be revealing the manner. So that's one other utility of the human remains, right? So then further, if you see, further, to estimate and assess the time since the death has occurred. So we can apply some of the techniques, like let's say decomposition as well as the biochemical indicators. So we can use these biochemical indicators and decomposition kind of techniques, and there with the level of decomposition, we can systematically assess the time of the death. That means time since the death. That means this particular crime incident might have occurred 10 hours ago, or 3 days ago, or 1 week ago. Like that, we can estimate that time. So that's another important aspect. Then further, human remains also helps us to reconstruct the death circumstances through the body context and taphonomy. So this is one another important aspect. So we can further reconstruct the death circumstances. So what circumstances might have led to this death? So let's say, for example, a person might have committed suicide. So in such instances, so we can also reveal some of the facts. That is also subject matter of the forensic analysis. So that is one thing. And then further, supporting the legal investigation and humanitarian missions. So this is another important thing. So think about disasters. when earthquakes or such kind of things happens, in such kind of issues, so it also helps in understanding the humanitarian mission. So that's how, so the human remains will be helpful, right? So now, let's try to just learn more about each thing. Where, first and foremost, you can talk about the aspect of the establishing identity of a person. So how we can establish? So we have basically understood that the human remains will help in establishing identity of a person. So how? So we can establish, the human remains helps to establish the age, sex, stature, ancestry through skeletal morphology. So when we systematically study the skeletal morphology, so we can study we can analyze all these things: age of that particular victim, sex of that particular victim, or the stature, or some other information about that particular person. So let's say, for example, if we systematically analyze the pelvic bone, so we can get to know that this particular person is female or male. So we can reveal the gender. And age, by looking at the calcification of the bones, when we take up the bones, so by looking at the calcification of the bones, so we can calculate the age. So like that, human remains will help in doing all these things. And not only these things, others, like we can have dental records, we can have healed injuries, or we can check the implants and the individual identification. So in all this, the human remains will be useful. That's one thing. Then further, like the bones and teeth preserve the DNA for profiling even after the long intervals. So bones and teeth that are available at the crime scene, so they will be helpful for us for DNA profiling. So through DNA profiling, that is DNA fingerprinting technique, so we can further analyze and we can get more of the data. So that's how it will be helpful, right? Then further, we have understood that the human remains will be helpful in determining the cause and manner of the death. So cause and manner of the death. So how the death has been occurred and what is the cause for the death. So skeletal trauma reveals sharp force, blunt force, or the firearm injuries. So when we pick up a victim's body, so there we can see what kind of the instrument has been used to kill this particular person. So is it a sharp force? Or is it a blunt force? That means the instrument was a sharp instrument, or the instrument is a blunt instrument, or is there any kind of firearms that have been used? So all such kind of things will help in the forensic analysis. Right? Further, if you see, distinguishing antemortem, perimortem, and postmortem damage, that further helps us in reconstructing the events surrounding the death. So if you systematically study the antemortem, postmortem, and as well as the perimortem, so kind of things in forensic analysis, so that further helps us to understand the, we can determine the cause and manner of the death. Is that it clear for you? Now further, how does this human remains will help in forensic analysis? So next important utility is that it helps in estimating post-mortem interval. So PMI we call in forensic analysis or forensic anthropology. What is PMI? Post-mortem interval. So what is this post-mortem interval? So the period of the period times since the death occurred. So if you go for the decomposition changes, if you systematically study this, or bone weathering, or insect activity, if we try to observe these kind of patterns, so this further assists in estimating this time since the death. So estimation, the time since the death is basically called as the post-mortem interval, PMI. So human remains will help us to understand this also. Is that it clear? Now further, so how does this will be helpful? So human remains will be further helpful for us in reconstructing the events and circumstances that are associated with that crime or the death. Reconstruction of the circumstances and events. Let's say, for example, so we can systematically check the position and condition of the remains. When we see the position and condition of the remains, so we can come to a conclusion that, or it indicates further that the concealment, the burning or dismemberment, or the environmental exposure. So all of these things will be further helpful for us to handle that particular case in a systematic fashion. Right? Further, the taphonomic analysis, it clarifies the natural versus human-induced modifications. So there could be some sort of manipulations that could be done. So if there is any sort of manipulations that are done by humans, means like after the death, so then we can find out from the taphonomic analysis or taphonomic studies. So this is one another important advantage of the human remains in forensic analysis. Right, friends? So then further, let's try to see this. So let's understand that. It will be further helpful in legal and human rights application. So if you see the human remains, they will serve as they are very crucial for disaster victim identification. And further, so for in the instances of mass grave investigations, so what we can do, we can use this human remain analysis in the forensic analysis. Further, for resolving some of the cold cases through preserved skeletal evidences. So in all these cases, human remains will be helpful for us. So overall, what you can just remember, these points. So first thing is how they'll be helpful. So first thing is to establish the identity of a person. Second thing is to reveal the cause of the death and manner of the death. Third thing, to estimate and assess the time since the birth, that is PMI, post-mortem interval, and then further reconstruction of the death circumstances. So then for supporting the legal as well as investigation activities. So in all these cases, these remains will be helpful. So try to remember, and you can pitch and mention such kind of points. Right? So further, so what is facial reconstruction technique? That's another important question for us. So now, let's see what is facial reconstruction technique. So the name itself, it talks about we are trying to reconstruct the face of a person. So that's the facial reconstruction technique. So here you can see an example here. Can you see that? Let's assume that this skeleton or this skull has been available for us. So with the help of this available skull, what we do, we will try to use some of the techniques. Let's say for example, the 2D drawings or clay-based 3D modeling, so such kind of things, or computer-generated virtual reconstruction. So we will use such kind of techniques, or we will use such kind of technological things, and we will try to reconstruct the face of the person. Are you getting that? So that's the basic facial reconstruction technique. So you can see here, this is the skeleton that was available. So they will go for clear-cut analysis of the measurements of skull and all those things. Then accordingly, they will try to just make the, try to trace the identity of the person. So they will try to reconstruct this in a systematic fashion. So that is basically known as facial reconstruction technique. So now, when we will use this, what is the utility of this, and what are the other key components of this? So this we have to mention. Now let's see what is the facial reconstruction technique and what is its purpose. First, the facial reconstruction technique, it's a basic forensic method. It's a basic forensic method which is generally used to recreate the probable facial appearance of an unidentified individual. So this is one thing. First and foremost, you have to remember that it's a forensic method. What's its purpose? It is used to reconstruct the probable facial appearance of whom? Of unidentified individual. From where? From the skull, or by with the help of aiding identification, or when other methods like fingerprints or DNA are unavailable. So try to understand this logic. Is that clear for you? Now friends, so this is where we will use the facial reconstruction technique. Okay? Now further, if you see, what is the utility of it? So when we see from the perspective of utility, so the facial reconstruction technique, it will be helpful in various aspects. So first, it helps us to generate leads in the criminal investigations. First thing, we'll get some sort of clues, we'll get some sort of leads. So when we could be able to systematically reconstruct the face, so the identity would be revealed slightly. So then we can just publish that at various places, and we can try to get the identity of that particular person. So that's how it helps us to generate leads in the criminal investigation. That's the first thing. Then mass disasters. It will be helpful in the mass disaster kind of situations also, and historical or archaeological identifications. So imagine, let's say for example, we have got a skull of fossil. Then with the help of facial reconstruction technique, we can further try to just reconstruct the face of that particular fossil. So using the skull available. So like that, this will be one thing. So here in this case, what is central means, the central aspect here is the skull. So that's why skull as the foundation. So facial reconstruction uses skull as the foundation aspect. So here starts the entire technique. So what does it do? The technique begins with analyzing the cranial morphology. So we will systematically go for cranial morphological studies. We will try to analyze the shape of the skull, the height of the skull, the width of the skull, or the other aspects like what about the nasal aperture, what about the orbits, what about the jaw shapes, so upper jaw and lower jaw, then dentation pattern, and then muscle attachment sites. So all of those things which strongly influence the facial form. So all of these things will be strongly influencing the facial form. So we will systematically try to just analyze all these kind of cranial morphological features. So when we systematically analyze the cranial morphological features, then it is easy for us to reconstruct the face of that particular person, right? So that's how the facial reconstruction technique uses the skull as the foundation. Is that clear for you? Now, further, let's move and understand what are the other aspects about the facial reconstruction technique, other components. So other component is tissue depth markers. We will also use tissue depth markers in the facial reconstruction. What are these tissue depth markers? Now, we will go for standard tissue depth measurements which are specific to the sex, age, ancestry and physique, and they are placed at the anatomical points on the skull to estimate the soft tissue thickness. So what could be the probable thickness of the soft tissue? So skin and the muscle. So all those things we can understand with this tissue depth markers. So this is another important component that we use in the facial reconstruction technique. So catch this. Further, the facial reconstruction technique, it will be useful for reconstruction of the muscles. So not only the face, we can also reconstruct the muscles. So how? There are so many major facial muscles that are modeled over the skull following the anatomical patterns, shaping the contours of the cheeks, lips and jawline. So with the help of available skull, so we can systematically able to construct the muscles over that particular bones. So that this technique also involves that reconstruction of the muscles with the help of available skull. So that's one important component. Then further, the facial reconstruction technique also helps in modeling facial features. So the next important thing is, what about the nose, what about the lips, what about the eyes, what about the ears, what about all such kind of important parts of the face. They can be reconstructed using population based guidelines and biomechanical correlations. So with the help of biomechanical correlations or population based studies or the further aspects, so we can able to systematically model the facial features. So in total, if you see, facial reconstruction technique is generally used to reconstruct the face and facial features and the muscles and the measuring the tissue depth of that particular identified sample of the skeleton, particularly the skull. So this is the facial reconstruction technique. So you can mention all such kind of features and you can highlight it. Is that clear for you all? So now further. So we have already discussed the techniques. So generally in facial reconstruction, we will use the techniques like, it could be 2D drawings, or it could be the clay-based 3D modeling, or computer-generated virtual reconstructions, or further, we can also use CT-based digital techniques. So computerized tomography, so scan, digital scan. So this is another technique. So these are all the various aspects that you can pitch and mention in the body portion of the answer. So hope things are clear for you now. So further, how you can conclude the answer? So in the conclusion, you can reiterate the significance and you can further simply mention or highlight about the facial remains. So how you can say, look here, in legal and humanitarian contexts, human remains are indispensable. So look at the lines. For criminal investigations, for mass disaster victim identification, and for mass grave documentation, and making them central to the modern forensic science. So for in all these aspects, human remains are very, very, very vital. So they will serve us they will help us to identify all these kind of things. So simply to say, to solve so many medico-legal cases, this particular thing will be helpful for us. Is that clear? Now further, integration of the traditional anthropological models with the modern biomolecular and digital technologies has greatly enhanced the precision and scope of the forensic analysis. And this integration of the traditional anthropological methods with the modern biomolecular studies made the human remains a cornerstone of both the criminal investigation and humanitarian work. So this is how you can conclude the answer, right? So that's where you can use some of those kind of lines and you can highlight and reiterate the relevance, significance and utility of human remains in the forensic analysis. So that's all you can mention. So hope things are clear for you all. So now friends, so in the next session, let us take up another important question. That's on the day 20, let's take up this question. So look at the question. So we have done with all the questions in the section B of 2020 UPSC paper 1. So from question number 5 to question number 8, so we have done all the questions. So now let's move back to the section A. So in section A, we have done all the 10 marker questions. So 1A to 1E we have done. So now let's begin with the second question. So 2A. So what is the question? Discuss Miocene hominid remains and their significance in the evolution. Miocene hominid remains. So we will be moving towards the fossils in this particular question. So friends, let's discuss about this question on Monday. So meanwhile, what you can do, you can write the answer for the question and try to just attempt it. So at least we have to attempt, we have to put our efforts. Unless you put your efforts, so no one can pull you up. So try to remember this. So you must and should attempt the question. So try, efforts are important, it's not the outcome. So outcome will be, like we will be bothered about the outcome in the main examination, not here. So here, why do you think about perfection? Do not think about the perfection. And UPSC doesn't want the perfectionists. UPSC wants the people who can just are the aspirants who can just work on time. That's it. So have the consistency, try to write the answers. Once you start writing, then it is very much important. Then it takes you to the shore of success. So that's all for the day from my side, friends. So write answer for the question and you can share answer to me through the Telegram channel. So Anthropology Guide, and you can just join there if you are the newly watching person. So then you can just join here and you can submit me the answer. So that's all for the day from my side. I hope there are no further doubts. So let's meet on Monday exactly at 11:30 a.m. sharp. So thank you all for joining me with this session. So it's me, your Dr. Suresh Guramgunda, signing off for the day.